And welcome back to this episode of Uncover the Human. Christina and I are joined today by our guest, Aaron Velky. Welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Woo! We made it.
We made it. A few minutes late, but we all have the same microphone, so I think that's pretty cool.
And no one knows that we were late. No one knows.
Yeah.
I know. No one knows. It's not live. We did not have 5,000 people waiting.
Whenever you clicked this, it's on time.
Yes. You're here. You're listening. It's going to be a great show.
Yes.
So, Aaron, give us a little background on you, besides the fact that you have the same microphone that we do.
Well, that is the entirety of my story is that moment. I selected it. I'm just kidding. I've worn a lot of hats, and I'm in an interesting transitional stage of self-discovery, connecting to rediscovery from the work perspective. It's kind of like all up in the air in an exciting way. I've been the CEO of a company for about 8 years called Money Club, where we've taken this idea that if you teach someone financial intelligence, which we would say is emotional intelligence and understanding how money works, you change a family, you change a person, you change a community, and you change a business. So that has been a really cool business trajectory where we now go into businesses and help the employer tell their employees that they care and invest in them through financial education, which is really, really cool. Outside of that, though, I've dabbled for a long time in coaching entrepreneurs and creatives. I've published a book. I coached youth soccer for about 12 years. I've now been leaning really heavily into leadership. I've got this burning both satisfaction and desire to change the workplace. I just get really frustrated at the way leaders see their teams and interact with people that make their organization thrive. So I'm really passionate about my future headed towards more leadership training, speaking, coaching, etc. And I don't know what that looks like yet. That's sort of the transition. Is I find the passion in it. Money Club is in a space of redefinition, and I'm in this area and terrain of, well, how do I go make the dent that I believe I can make? So I've got a couple hats. I run retreats. I believe in a lot of different change vehicles through business, and yet still find myself at this junction of what does my future look like, and how do I ask the bigger questions and the hard questions as I go?
That is a good explanation, and very much in line with kind of how we ended up doing this. We were frustrated with kind of how leadership works, how leaders see their team. What can you do to make life better? What can you do to improve communities? And I love the angle you've got going through basically financial literacy and financial intelligence, getting that combined with just human nature. It's a really cool angle.
Most days. And I say most days because here's the truth, right? Like when you really want to change, when you look at a problem, there's the surface level that requires a very succinct explanation and a very traditional and tried and true approach at solving it. And you can take almost any financial problem and surface level slice it and surface level solve it. And that's happening all over the US. And the same could be said for leadership, right? Surface level. And we see that happening over and over. And the same problem has existed for 50 years. And now you can move money in 4.5 milliseconds with no fees, no costs. Transactions happen like this, and behavior is likely to be the culprit for financial decay for the average person, more than do you know how credit works? And I think the same could be said for leadership. It's easy to say, well, no, leadership is giving you the orders, when leadership is often listening to why there's a challenge in the first place. And it's that kind of logic that I think demands more out of the people that have something at stake and have people following behind them.
I'd really like the surface level focus there, because definitely see it in organizations and leaderships all over the place. It's very much everything is a Band-Aid. And it's like, how about, you stop putting Band-Aids on deep wounds and figure out why the wound exists to begin with. And it seems to be missing because of this need for action and activity. It's like, show value, provide value. And somehow at some point, value was equated with action and activity. And I'm like, no, value is actually more equated with understanding what's at the core and focusing on that. And then it takes time and listening and thinking and trying and empathy and a lot of other things that are not action oriented. It's not your spreadsheet. It's not your KPIs. It's none of these things that you want to touch and measure every single second.
Yeah, man. I find it fascinating. Like, we get asked, and I've been asked in various capacities, what's the ROI? Right? It's a tried and true question. What's the ROI?
Yeah.
And it's that question speaks to a wide misalignment with what people need, right? If you were asking the ROI on your people, you got a lot to learn. And I understand the root of the question. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand the root of the question. It just speaks to a problem. And it speaks to this mentality that, well, if I pour into my people, it's got to be 1-to-1. It's got to be 2-to-1. It's got to be measurable. And the measurables are on the far side of it. They're not, it's not linear. And I find that non-linear thinking is hard to broach in a lot of business circles. And I'm reading like all these stats lately without the numbers. Many people, I think it was like 47% of people, are considering a job change in 12 months that would be less pay. They don't want to leave for more money. They want to leave for less money. Yeah. That is leadership in a nutshell, right? I don't want to be here. I will get me out of this problem.
Yeah.
We're in a new world.
Yeah. So it's leadership failure in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Major leadership failure.
Driving the people out.
Exactly. It's like, forget retention. It's like, stop the revolving door. It's on speed dial right now.
Yeah.
Revolving door is the perfect image. I think of when you're talking about the way that you've approached this work, it reminds me of like the development of the field of behavioral economics, where basically traditional economics had been much more, what's going to be the maximum gain or maximum utility or maximum profit from something, and assuming that everybody would act in a way that would maximize that. And so you come up with all these models that are basically built for robots, not humans. Humans don't work that way. You got exactly what you just said. People are happy to leave a job in the next 12 months for less pay, which if you just go based on they're going for money angle, clearly not. Clearly that's not like what's actually driving this. There's core behavioral changes that are happening, that people have different desires. And if you're not on top of that as a leader, you're going to watch that revolving door spin.
Yeah. And it only accelerates from there, right? It doesn't get better. You don't just have 6 people leave and your culture's, without work going to improve. It's likely that people that are mindful of bad culture are going to be the ones that lead the exodus, and it only spirals down because those people cared enough to pay attention and probably try for a long period to correct it. I've long been a believer in behavioral economics. I remember reading Misbehaving from Richard Thaler and Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational, and all these books. And I got really engaged by this concept of humans being human. And, the arc I've been on with financial education as a workplace benefit and teaching kids about money through what that business used to be before the pandemic, like that started a really interesting thread in my life. That thread being, what happens if you give people information without inspiration? And generally it fails, right? There's same with leadership. You can't change a leader and say hey, look, culture is important because 47% of people are considering an exit. You have to inspire something bigger than that. And this whole, I don't know why it sets me on fire. I've been in organizations working down, with the team, and inspiring culture through that mechanism. And now what seems more, maybe bigger, is to work in an organization and lift the leaders up, take them, and then the work down is easier. Mm-hmm. But it's an interesting journey that I find myself on, and just period of change.
We are glad to hear you say that. That's exactly kind of our approach to this. We looked at it. We tried. We actually had the same journey of like trying to change a culture that we wanted to see improve from the inside for a while, and then we were like, all right, well, now it's time to take this show on the road. Essentially, when you can't make that progress, and that was our conclusion too. Was this is a leadership thing, like right, lift the leaders up and help the rest of the organization go there. So I'm curious how you came to that conclusion. What made you think it was leadership, and how have you worked with that?
When so Money Club has been a lesson generator for a lot of my last couple of years. We were joking, the team and I, we were joking about, if life was an RPG, I racked up a ton of experience points through this. The conversation when we primarily did youth programming was to go to principals, executive directors, et cetera, and say, hey, there is a world not far ahead of your students, doesn't matter how old they are, where money is the centrifugal force that they are going to focus on. It's the thing that spins around everything else. And like, it's going to stick them to the walls of this circle. Their job, their family, their career, their opportunities, their happiness, it's all going to revolve around that like force to stick to the outside wall. Well, we would almost get laughed out of the room. Like, look, it's not on the test, man. Who cares?
Yeah.
I'm like, what benchmark are you paying attention to? And
one that gives them money.
What? Yeah, exactly. Right. The school benches. So
shockingly enough, that
ironically, they're stuck in their own centrifugal force.
They're stuck to the walls in their decision making.
Yeah. And then at that point, and who I was at the time, I didn't see the bigger picture. I just saw, hey, we're getting stuck here. Well, fast forward, pandemic changes us, we pivot, we evolve, we go more employee wellness. Running the same problem. Why would I buy that for my team? Why would I pay for my team to learn something that doesn't directly impact their business skill? I'm like, well, would you like some more stats? Because when the pandemic hit, production tanked, people freaked out. If they don't have a car because of payment or all kinds of challenges related to an issue that they can't afford, you're gonna feel it. They're gonna call out, or they're gonna lie to you, or they're gonna say they're online and they're not, and they're gonna be freaking out. I've been there. I've experienced all that, and it was like, listen, I think we'll just buy them lunch. And
here's a Jimmy John sandwich. Yeah, please don't leave.
Yeah, or like,
when did a Little John ever not fix the problem?
It always does. They're just hangry. They're not financially unstable.
That's the byline for Money Club, right?
Here's a new Snickers commercial. Your employees are hangry. Yeah. Buy them a box of Snickers.
Just have a Snickers. It'll solve all of it.
You're not financially stable when you're hungry. Just have a Snickers.
They're the same problem. It's the same problem. You're just hungry. So, we're having these conversations, and it just felt like we were beating our head against the wall. Like, there are organizations who are very fast to say it's $200 an employee. It's cheaper than a bonus, more effective than a training that might be, I don't know, general education, more applicable, more relevant. And I know that my people come to work for a paycheck. I know that. It seems obvious. It was not. So let me see if I can bolster their stability and their personal development. And many, many times it was like leadership was not clued into the human condition that was an average employee. So here's my hypothesis, right? As an entrepreneur, there are a couple rules I live by that are outside of the rules of everyone else. It's like I'm unplugged from the matrix, right? I have unlimited earning potential. I can work the hours that I need to work, oftentimes many more than I would need to. However, I have the option to work sort of on command. I can work from where I want. I can solve problems with capital. I can say, we need to hire someone. We need to buy this. We need to invest in this. Like, my relationship with money is healthy. And when there's an experience that shocks the organization, while I might be the most emotionally shocked, I'm probably the last financially shocked. Right? I would have to get rid of all of the chess pieces before I lay down the king. Right. And that's not to like pedestalize me. It's just the reality of the organization. So if those are my rules, those are wildly different rules than what everyone else experiences. Completely different. And I think there's a distance from, we'll use the chess analogy, from like, okay, I'm the piece on the chessboard that everyone protects, to I'm a piece on the chessboard. And what an employee may be experiencing is not unlimited earning potential. It's not work whenever you want. It's deadlines and constraints. It's work where you are. It's, pay off your rent. You may not be earning enough to save $1,000 a month or save $4,000 a month. That might not be your experience. And if our worlds are that disjointed and I'm not aware of that, there is only going to be more divide as we slowly drift through a challenge. And it seemed obvious the more and more we had conversations, and the more I've had conversations with leaders who were like, yeah, they're fine. I'm like, no, they're not. Like, and that's not the issue. Like, even if they're fine, that's not your responsibility is to make sure they thrive. Because I'm telling you, they're going to go somewhere that they thrive. That's the whole fucking point. Yeah. And the more energized I am about what we do in Money Club, the more I see the larger problem. And what we do is a sliver of culture and value and change. And I know that I'm capable of influencing at a higher level from a broader perspective and to a wider audience who's maybe not able to make the shift themselves. Again, they might have the information, not the inspiration, and it's going to take both.
I really like that delineation, inspiration, information. And Christina and I were just talking about this last week, as the approach to change management is slowly changing over time. And there's more understanding that you can't just throw stats at people. You can't just say, and of course it never actually worked, but we're finally now kind of in the zeitgeist saying, hey, this doesn't work.
What? That doesn't work?
It's not like this is a new problem. It used to be spreadsheets, and that used to work perfectly, but now not anymore. And it was on Adam Grant's podcast, and he was even joking about it. He's like, I've got this personally. Like, I need to stop thinking this. He's like, I often keep going up to my team or going into my research, being like, look at the data, and everybody's like, yep. It does nothing, changes
that's
nothing.
Data.
Like I have this, I have the same limiting belief of like, hey, I tell people like this is what's important. Look at the stats. And everybody's like, wow, yep, no change. You don't have the story, you don't have the inspiration, you don't have the connection to what actually matters.
Yeah, stats are so overvalued, incredibly overvalued, right? I in my mind, a stat is like driving like in your Mario Kart game, and a stat is the blue shell that just knocks out first place, and it just heat-seeking like turtle shell that you win, right? You just automatically win. So you're like, hey, here's a stat that says 14% of people love Jimmy John's. You're like, definitely getting Jimmy John's. That's the answer.
We're getting every lunch.
And
too bad half of my team is gluten-free.
Yeah, no one cares. Like,
oops.
It's not your win all. Like, this is going to win your race, your game. It's not going to help your company. It's not going to radically get everyone excited. And, there's just a lot of missed opportunity.
This is definitely something that kind of comes back. We kind of go back to repeatedly as like what ends up making the difference, often at least, is empathy. Like it's that leadership empathy of understanding, like, yeah, I might be in a different position on the chessboard, but I have to understand what's happening for everybody else. And I totally get why stats feel like a great idea, especially as a leader. Like, you're trying to determine all kinds of gray areas. You're trying to decide what's true of what people are telling you. You're constantly trying to figure out what might be real so that you can try and move something forward. I get 100% why everybody leans and says they want data-driven decisions and say they want all of the data possible and they want to be able to make all these smart moves. It won't connect until you can connect. Yeah, it won't deliver until you can reach that.
Yeah, and I think as a leader, the larger question that often is missed is, was this data collected for the right reasons with the right skew behind it. Like this always happens in my like periphery, and it's never like frontal. It just, I see it where I'm like, wow, 5 years ago that was totally false, and or 3 years ago that was like the answer, and now it's not the answer. What the heck? And we disprove and reprove and unprove and prove data in a lot of ways. And as a not scientist and a creative, I'm often looking for the through line between the data to really be discerning about what does this suggest? Because in order to get hyper specific data about employees, you have to ask a rather pointed question. Otherwise, you would get lost in all the data, right?
Yeah.
You would not be able to make data. If you said, hey, what makes you feel better about your workplace? You either have to give them a list of options so you can rank them, or you have to ask people in a certain way to get consistent results, because people are going to have such different answers. So the data serves as a reminder and maybe a nudge, not a social science that's proven.
Yeah, I completely agree. One of the things that I've seen is the trend of data analytics and data scientists and data analysts and big data, and you get all the data that you want out there. You know, some of the pieces that I've been wondering in the last few years is like, what are you going to do with it? Like, yes, you can have access to all the data in the world. You can have your cloud system. You can have your dashboards. You can have all these things. But it doesn't mean anything if part of the project of getting to this data includes, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to actually read it in a way that makes sense and informs possible decisions? Doesn't dictate decision. It's not the decision maker. It's just part of the collection. It's part of the discerning. And that seems to be where now in articles and in some of the other outlets is coming out that's where all this big data stuff falls. Great, we've got Azure. Great, we've got AWS. Great, we've got Power BI. And so what? I've got a cookie next to me. Your Power BI right now has the same function as my cookie if you don't actually know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And have some intelligent view of like, okay, this is part of the story.
And won't solve your hangry problem.
No. And he wants the cookie, however, here you go. Now that you're no longer hangry, can we actually go back to talking about humans, not the data?
And our latest iteration is AI and machine learning. That's our next one. We're like, this will solve the data problem. That'll process all of this data for us. That's what's going wrong. Like, but it still doesn't work because you're still not training it on what to look for. You don't even know what to look for half the time, which is kind of the issue.
Yeah. So what do you all think about the way that AI is going to transform what someone has the capacity to do, right? I like to think that if we use AI appropriately, it frees up resources to do the more human elements, the creative elements, the connective tissues. What do you all see coming?
I would love that to happen.
Yeah.
That's a great aspiration.
I would love that universe. How do we get a portal to it?
Yeah.
I think eventually, hopefully some companies will get there. We'll get to using AI for that too. There's a bunch of things that can be automated. There's a bunch of things that can be taken out of the busy stuff so that people can focus on the human to human connections. And if we're still stuck in this world where value equals, what did you do today? Give me a list on a spreadsheet. We're never going to get there because the human connections, what are you going to do? What are you going to write down? We talked about it a little bit at the beginning or before recording. Is like, I just realized that all I do all day is talk to people. How is anybody that's stuck on a KPI, on a value, on a spreadsheet, on an ROI world going to think that that's valuable and look at that? I'm like, so now I have to measure how many people you talk to and how long you talk to them for and what comes out of it. Because there's always this obsession of measuring what. It's measuring arbitrary numbers because we're not measuring anything except for whatever our limiting beliefs are.
And And to your point, Aaron, I get why the question is asked. I get why we're looking for that ROI, why we want to see that connection, because we'd love to be able to hey, if I have X number of conversations, it results in this. So I just need to have X times 5 number of conversations to have 5 times the result, right? We want that correlation. I get the desire. We're talking about humans though, and this becomes much messier. It'd be like assuming that like the salesperson that lands $1 million deal after 6 months only had one productive day on the day they signed that deal. There's so much building and getting into that. And there's a lot of deals that probably almost came through along the way, but are they really only productive that one day when it worked?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sort of the athlete that has a breakout game or their first game. And we've only seen that particular transaction or the signing or the draft day, not the practice field months and months and months and months and months ahead.
Yeah. And was every, stepping through tires drill exactly correlated to, the perfect play? Or was it just a series of growing the muscles so that you could make that perfect play when the time came?
Yeah, I love sports as an analogy for a lot of this, right? The sports container usually has similar frameworks and plenty of metaphors for the workplace. So you've got a leader, a coach. Typically you've got specialization in and among a team. You've got likely an array of supporting cast. You've got trainers, doctors, parents, like all the above. And interestingly, in the sports container, in the last 5 to 7 years, we've seen a ridiculous amount of support going into culture, mindset, health and nutrition, not just weightlifting and studying game film, the traditional pathways of this is what makes a good athlete. Sleep studies have started to enter the scene, all kinds of tracking and metrics on what people are digesting and consuming as far as information, like just a wild array of change. And still in that arena, we often don't look at the coach. We look at the athlete, right? We still look at the player and we say, this is all on you, rather than the leader, the influence, the ecosystem that they're in. And when you dig into like elite sports teams that have regularly swept, you can often look at a consistent leader. You move, as a great example, Tom Brady, right? You move him from one organization to the other, everybody gets better.
Yeah.
It's a pretty fascinating statement. And
it is.
Most people stop at, well, he's just the best quarterback. He really doesn't score that much. He has to empower people. He literally has to throw the ball to another person. And I wish that more leaders could adopt that similar mentality, like throw the ball, get it out of your hands, throw the ball to your team. Yeah. I think about that a lot.
That's a great one. And these are, interestingly enough, the kind of data that people either don't see or it's just too anecdotal. But I read the Navy SEAL book, that extreme leadership one, or extreme ownership. They talk about how in Navy SEAL training, they have competitions where they're all doing these intensive trainings where they have to do something on a boat or whatever. And they have 6 different teams, and there's one team that was just consistently outperforming, and one team that just consistently was last place in all of these race challenges. And so they eventually, about halfway through the day, said, okay, the first place and last place leaders are switching. You have the other team, and the one that had consistently placed last the very next race came in second. And the first place team still did pretty well. I think they still got the first place, but the performance totally changed. You throw in leaders, you can watch the performance change based on how the leaders are doing it. It's hard to have that as data, because I think people maybe are, worried to confront their own leadership, either misgivings or it's just too abstract. Well, how do I become a better leader then? You're still looking for, okay, but what's the formula? What do I need to do? I need to have 17 one-on-ones exactly per year. That's the optimum amount or something. Still looking for that.
Yeah, there's almost like a permission that's lacking to do something in the way that feels best for your team, or to even ask, right? I learned a really tough lesson. My team in this might've been right before the pandemic, maybe 2019. They sat me down and they were like, hey dude, like we're getting whiplash left and right. We get you're visionary and we get you like to make decisions and you're like seeing up from above and like that's all fine and well. We are going left, stopping and then going right, stopping and then going left. And we're just like our necks are going to break from changing angles so much. And what makes me proud of that moment is not that I was in no way being a good leader. What made me a good leader in that moment was shutting up, right? Just to listen and say like, okay, what do we need to do different? How is this making you feel? What can I do to have a filter for the ideas? And it became a really good conversation. And that's what created a better person in me, was the ability to listen to their challenge. And when we just adopt, we tend to adopt one of two things. Either we say, wow, I like that, I'll do that, or I don't like that, so I won't do that. That's a pretty limited set of options. It's all based on duplication of experience, right? Either I'll duplicate it because I like it, or I'll do something different and I'll duplicate outside of my environment, which gives you such limited permissions to do anything that matters. If you're listening, you're a leader of a business and you've only done one of those two things, or maybe both of those two things, you're like trying to fix a car with a screwdriver. It's a very limited range of tools that you have to operate with in a very new paradigm, right? A very new work paradigm. Mm-hmm. In the last 3 years, we've had radical shifts in the way that work matters to people, in the way that people connect to each other, in the way that we build relationships, and the emphasis on emotional health, mental health, emotional intelligence is still significantly undervalued compared to the overvaluing of statistics. And I'd like to be a part of the ripple that is changing that for large organizations that are like, dude, it's not working. Something's not working. We're hemorrhaging people. We're not attracting good talent. We don't know what to do. Well, probably time to change. It's probably you.
Yeah, it's probably you. Yeah.
And maybe that's the other hard thing in leadership. It is inevitably you at the end of not, enabling enough, not figuring out the right, not guessing enough, not being able to experiment enough, and that's hard to accept. And I feel empathy for that. But I also love your car screwdriver analogy. Like you are trying to solve a complex problem with a very limited number of solutions that are available to you. Yeah. And maybe that's a great thought exercise as a leader is what am I missing? What's the experiment I can try? What tools might I be missing? Or am I even approaching this with the right? What if I left this toolbox behind and just looked at the problem and just said what needs to be done and figured out what I can do to make that happen?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I love a screwdriver, but I don't like I don't go to Whole Foods with a screwdriver. What I find fascinating.
That makes one of us then.
Come on, man. What?
You have a master screwdriver flying?
It's a Swiss Army knife, right? Right, Alice? At least tell me it's a Swiss Army knife.
Oh, I don't go with any tools. I'm just kidding. I just had to give you a hard time.
Just walk.
Continue.
So this is an interesting sort of bridge, right? If you think about a Swiss Army knife, you've got a variety of tools and a really sort of appropriate packaging that says, look, what do you need right now? Mm-hmm. And what I've found fascinating by talking to a lot of people, a lot of leaders, a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs in the last several months is that the tool doesn't always work when you want it to work or in the container that it works for someone else. Mm-hmm. And like, not every team needs us. Not every team needs Money Club. Not every team needs Aaron to come in and rattle your cage and give you a bunch of truth that you probably don't want to hear.
Well, every team does, but they may not want to hear it. That's the block.
They may not be able to do it. Yes.
Yeah. Like the team may need, I don't know, maybe they need to get outside. Maybe instead of everyone working remote, you need to fly them in for a retreat. Maybe that's what your team needs. Maybe you work in an office all day and you don't need that. Maybe you need a work remote day. This is like a moving, complex intelligence that is a community in most places. That's what people seem to want. And if it is a community, then it always evolves. And I wish I had an answer to just say like, hey, you don't need a screwdriver. You need a scalpel. You need an air blower. You need pair of scissors, whatever it is. I don't think there's going to be a way to do that unless a leader is willing to take the pulse of the people that they serve, and they even have to do that with a degree of unbiasedness, which is incredibly difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to what you said earlier, which is you're not the one that needs to come up with a solution. You're the one that needs to be asking. So it's not up to you to figure out, oh, you don't need a screwdriver. Here's a Swiss Army knife. No, it's you don't need a screwdriver. What would you need?
Nice.
That's the shift. And I don't know why there's this taboo or something bias against asking. I mean, we see it all the time, especially in change. And it's not just leader to employees or that relationship, but it's also employee to employee and teams to teams. There's this assumption that you're supposed to know what the answer is, and so then you go to the safe space and ask that safe space or those people, and like, what should I do? And I'm like, I'm not them. Ask them. I don't know what you should do. Ask them what they want.
Yeah. What a lesson in humility.
Yeah.
And also, what a way to connect to the fact that you can make your leadership job easier. Like, because you're like, you should be asking for the solution. And if it was all up to you to have the solutions, then I guess you better be reading every possible book and thinking every possible thought. Like, it can only be as big as your imagination, your capability, which I'm not saying that people are limited. I think people can absolutely expand their ability to generate ideas, come up with creative solutions, and leaders should absolutely be on top of helping do that. But ultimately, you are there to have a team solve a problem, and you're there to help them do that, and they have a lot of answers, and you don't have to have all the answers. And if you did, how would the organization grow? It can never be bigger than you are. Then it can never be bigger than your own thoughts. And how can you grow as a leader if all of your job is the surface level, I give orders? Then you better have like every single possible order available to you, and have the respect of people that will listen to you when you need to deliver that.
Yep. Yeah, and that's such a profound and simple observation, right? There's no way out of this puzzle with just you. And I don't know. I think back to every time I thought I had the right answer, and now I'm much quicker to say, look, even as a coach, I can help you understand the puzzle better because of my own puzzles. I'm not here to give you the answer. I'm here to help you with the question. Yeah. And I think coaching, both in sports and with entrepreneurs in business, has helped me understand more that the answer really doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It's really about the process of how you get answers that is what creates a good leader. And how do you teach that? Like, let's figure this out right here on this call. Like, how do we, let's brainwash people to think about leadership that way? Can you ask the better questions? Not, can you tout the greatest answers?
Actually, I love the sports metaphor. Let's consider you've done like coaching of kids sports, right? You've done some coaching for that. Consider, and this happens with business, but it's an easy metaphor I think to draw. Like you've got, let's say, a soccer team, and somebody misses that they could have made a pass, or misses the connection, or just they kick it and it gets intercepted and whatever. Like there's a mistake that's made. You could tell the person go pass next time, which is like the leadership equivalent of being like, don't screw up. Like, next time, don't screw up. Or you figure out like, go back this up a little bit. What is the situation? What needs to happen? Obviously, the goal has stayed the same, and in sports, it's literally scoring a goal. So how do you help the person identify the situation they're in so that they can better identify in the future when something similar comes up? Because there will be a similar situation, but it'll never be exactly the same. That moment's already passed. That pass is already gone. Mm-hmm. How do you help teach them to think globally? How do you help teach the awareness? How do you help raise the awareness so that they can make that good decision when the time comes?
Man, it's such a good correlation. There are two stories that stand out a lot. One of the biggest challenges I had during a pretty important age transition, it was right before high school for a lot of players. One of the the consistent patterns was that they couldn't drive a ball across the field, right? They couldn't hit it 30, 35 yards. And I kept dealing with it in games and in practices. I'm like, what's going on? How come? I know they're capable of it. It would happen like once in a while. I'm like, holy shit, how did you, what? Where did that come from? And what I backtracked into was, oh, you don't have good balance. Your balance is broken. So reverse engineering back to let's install some balance was like an immediate fix to the problem. It took a long time. It, however, was the fix to the larger problem. Now you can drive a long ball. The other was watching players fail to see the field. So vision was lacking. And it's really hard to train vision, right? Similar as it is with leaders and employees. How do you create anticipation? How do you create critical executive functioning that's like, oh, if I make this choice, the immediate result is this. However, the big time result is this. And with players, what I started to do was have them, like I was holding up numbers and walking around the field. And after they took their first touch, they had to find me. So they had to start doing this, and it became habit really, really fast. And to even pay attention to that took a ridiculous amount of practice resources from me, because I couldn't focus on like the details that normally I would focus on. I had to just focus on these things. And it was a long-term win with a very short downside. The downside was months though. Months. And the hardest part of those choices to really fixate on balance and vision was dealing with parents. It's the hardest part. Dealing, which in this case is like stakeholders, right? Or stockholders. Yeah. They're like, well, wait a minute, our quarter results are down.
Yeah.
Our tournament results are down. I'm like, wait a minute. Are we playing for 3 months or are we playing for 3 years? What's the goal here? Yeah. Are we building a successful championship team, or are we building a career legacy? And I learned a lot about life and general and business and like people from this experience coaching soccer and coaching girls. And that I go back to those two things a lot. How do you build balance and awareness? I mean, shit, balance and awareness are two fundamental pieces of the workplace now anyway. Yeah. Just kind of connected that thread. Wow. Hey guys.
See,
we solved it.
So we solved it. Balance and awareness.
I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, exactly. And leadership problem solved. All right. Next world issue.
Yeah, I don't like when you think of balance and awareness. What comes to mind for you two?
Well, I love the vision piece on how you talked about don't think about just the effect of what you do now. Think of the ripple effect down the line. I find that is greatly missing, a lot more than I thought it would be in a lot of situations. And maybe it is that stockholder pressure of quarterly results. Maybe it's a lot of the big shift from generalists to deep experts, to the other extreme of like it's all about what I do. It's not about how what I do impacts 10 steps down the line. That's not what matters to me. But it's that awareness, it's that critical thinking that it's never just about you, no matter who you are in an organization or in a family, in a community. What you do never leaves, it doesn't live in a vacuum. And so that awareness and balance is like, how do I balance what I need to do with some understanding of the ripple effects down the line, and also with the ambiguity of those ripple effects, because I'm also not involved in step 9. I'm involved in step 1. And because it's humans, I don't have control over step 9. So then I do have to have the awareness, but I also have to have the balance to not get micromanaged involved in all the steps, because that's not my step. So I don't know that I have an answer besides another question.
It's good leadership right there.
I've been practicing.
Alex, what about you?
I think that I don't know. There's so many great connections in that, in the balance and awareness idea. First, I think awareness for me definitely goes back to that kind of awareness of the field, right? Getting your full vision of the field, and even that is technically limited. You're not seeing the influences of, like you were saying, stockholders, stakeholders, anybody else who's also involved. What are they thinking that they're, for child athletes, what are they thinking that their parents are seeing? What are they thinking that their friends are seeing? What are they thinking that the fans are seeing? That plays a role into it, and what is their awareness of their place in this and what they want, and how are they allowed to have trust with the rest of the team to see that field. So seeing is I love that vision concept of how can you look up and see the full scale of things, and balance. What skills are there that will help you deliver the results? And I like your exercise of having numbers, holding numbers up at different parts of the field. That sacrifices your personal awareness of the immediate things while you're trying to develop a different skill. But also it brings me back to the screwdriver metaphor. Did anybody tell you that holding numbers around a field is a great way to create vision, or were you trying to get people to look up more and you found a way to encourage the results that you thought would help? That's a good leadership.
Screwdriver is back. The screwdriver made it. What a theme. What a total through line of all this conversation. Don't be a screwdriver. Leaders, don't be a screwdriver. Damn it.
Know when to use a screwdriver. It's not that that's not useful. It's just, and you did, and essentially, I love the idea that you're creating different tools, right? Now you're thinking about well, how do you create vision? How do I get them to look up more? Well, give them something to look at, right?
Yeah.
That's a great leadership metaphor. It's not telling them, hey, go look up more. Hey, you're not looking up more. Hey, just get it into the bones, get the practice going. And you have to take that hit as a leader to say this is going to slow down the immediate things we were working on, but the idea is long-term success.
Yeah. And that's a huge block. It's this, again, instant gratification need. It's even the people that don't use Twitter are still expecting the Twitter experience in change management and leadership. It's well, we did that 2-day leadership training. Why are they not leading? I'm I don't know, because I did the two-day golf, training 10 years ago, and I still missed the ball. And no, I'm nowhere close to playing and, and succeeding. So
yeah. What's the ROI?
What's the ROI?
Training, ROI.
What the ROI? And I usually try to, when the ROI question comes up, well, first of all, it's an indication that we're probably in the wrong room and should not be wasting too much of our time. But also, if there is a chance there, it's more about what's the cost of not doing this.
Yeah,
it's not about what's the cost of doing it. What's the return of doing it? What's the cost of not doing it?
I love that.
Yeah, if it hasn't been working up to this point, what's going to happen when you just keep trying the same thing?
Right. Keep smashing your car into the wall. It's fine.
It's fine. Yeah.
You have a screwdriver. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, as a person that has definitely done that, there's a fear that I always crashed into that was, is this right? Am I finding the right people? Do I have the right tool? And I don't know, over time, maybe that's comfort with not knowing. It's familiarity with the uncertainty principle of it all, or it's a radical, I'm just going to do it anyway and see if it shakes out. Maybe it's all three combined. I've grappled with that, and I've really struggled with being in it, because when you're in it, it's hard to see. Your head goes down, right? It's like dribbling defender.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not looking at anything else. It's just my feet. And if there is any skill that I would implore a leader to really work on, it's being able to be in the moment and of the moment.
Yeah.
Being able to look down and look up. And it sounds really tough. It's a different level of awareness that is typically going to come from personal development outside of your traditional build business skills. That is so important, because you're like me, will hit that wall of, head down, and the fear is going to hit, the unknowns are going to hit, the panic's going to set in, or if things are going really well, this also happens. People are like, how am I going to sustain this? How am I going to keep this up? We just had a ball breaking quarter. Like everything changed. Now I got to do it again.
Yeah.
And I can't sleep at night knowing I got to do it again. And it's the same experience, just on a different side of the coin.
One metaphor it weirdly reminds me of is learning how to drive. Like if you take on leadership and take on a new role and take on something like that, like there is so much both at stake and at your fingertips and to keep in mind. And you got like rules of the road, laws to follow. You've got like a car that's more expensive than anything you've ever been ever had in your possession as like a teenager. Like this is now heavier. It's literally like there's life and death on the line, and it's like basic method of transportation. You're trying to remember how to even turn signals on. And I think it's something worth remembering because it is overwhelming at first to think about try and pull your head up and be, and I love how you said it, in and of the moment. It's really hard to do both of those things. And at the same time, 10 years later, you'll be cruising along and you don't even think about turning on turn signals, and you're like, that part is fine. You're now keeping awareness entirely on the road and the trip and your destination and what detours you need to take. You can get your head up a lot easier after you start those personal things getting more into habits. And that's the best thing you can do for yourself and your teams. Try and work those into habits you dig. Yes, absolutely. It's going to be exhausting the first time to 10 times to 27 times. And every time something you're looking up, and that's just how you work. You don't even think about it.
I remember learning to ride a motorcycle. Fun story. I was in Prague. Lauren and I, my partner, she grew up on motorcycles, like knew them like really well. I did not. I had my license, but I hadn't ridden in like 7 years. Long story short, crashed the bike. So we come back from the trip. Yeah, crashed the bike in Prague. The guy that gave us the bike was not happy. I was not happy either, to be candid.
Yeah. I had my vision on the field. I'm thinking about the motorcycle in Prague experience.
Yeah, thankfully everybody was good. Like I was a little banged up. She was not on the bike at the time. The bike still ran. It just like, scraped up. Anyway, come back. I'm like, I'm gonna buy a motorcycle, which to most people was like, why would you just crash the bike, man? Why would you buy a motorcycle? I was committed. In learning to ride a motorcycle, everything was new again. And there's so much connection with the bike. What's fascinating though, to connect to your story, Alex, and not just to tell you about my crashing motorcycle, is that when I got in a car, driving a car was different. When I was learning to drive a motorcycle, riding in a car was different. It accentuated the colors of stop signs. It livened the need to adhere to certain regulations, because in a motorcycle you have no safety. Like you're just you on a small little scooter. And in relearning a motorcycle, I was relearning a car at the same time. And it was really embarrassing in a lot of ways to be brand new, and like I'm like stalling out at stop signs, and then I'm getting in a car and it's also new. Like every function was different. And over that period of time, I also started to take classes in jiu-jitsu and Portuguese. And I was like taking a new series of classes every quarter to be a beginner again. And one of the hardest parts of my journey has been beginning, like starting over where I'm not good. I look terrible. I don't know what I'm doing. I ask bad questions. I fail consecutively. And that taught me and really reframed what it means to be bad at something so that I could get good at it. And I hope that the person I'm becoming regularly does that, regularly re-begins and starts over and has a really good relationship with being a beginner, because it's so natural for me to say, stay in my lane of expertise, stay where on stage I can speak about it, stay to the arenas that I can talk about. Don't go to that area of leadership that I don't understand. Don't go into, are you certified, Aaron? Like, do you have all your 3-letter stamps? Like, don't go that place, because that's a unfamiliar terrain. And I'm starting to be really intentional about opening that door up to be a beginner again. And in the transition period that I'm going through, I think that's likely to be the linchpin between who I want to be and the actions I take now. And that's the common thread is you're gonna have to start over, man. Like you're gonna have to do this like you've never done it. And maybe leaders would benefit from more beginning than they would from more do it the way you've always done it or more comfort zone activity. And I don't know how to break that pattern either.
Well, and I was thinking the exact same thing. It's like, what if the secret to good leadership is to always go back to the beginning, to always be in a situation where you're the beginner? And if you can't do that, then find a way to get into that situation. Because that's one of the pieces that very easily gets forgotten is as leaders, we learn to get to a certain expertise. We've tried things, we failed a bunch of times. We've learned through the failures, but then we forget what it's like to not be at the knowledge level that we are in most situations. And so we lack that empathy. We truly lack that empathy of understanding, hey, maybe it's easy for me to ask a bunch of questions and not have to give my expertise, but it wasn't that easy for me when I started this journey 3 years ago and I learned how to coach.
Yeah. Wow. That takes me back to like who I was after college, who I was 6 years ago, who I was before I came into entrepreneurship, and remembering who I was and the fears I had and the person that I wanted to be and how I would talk to that person. Right. If I could talk to the me then, I would talk very differently than I might with someone I hired out of the blue. And that's not really how I want to be. Right. I want to talk to anyone on the team or a part of the missions that I'm working on like I would talk to the former me, because that kid didn't know. He didn't have a clue. I still got some work to do.
We all do.
Sometimes it's exhausting to feel that way, and sometimes it's a big relief to know there's always more work to do.
Yeah.
I personally get bored when I get to the point of annoying. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's fun. And I'm done. What's the next challenge?
Yeah, maybe this is just the treadmill of leadership, right? There's a lot of responsibility, and treadmill has sort of a lackluster visual attached to it. Maybe it's whatever the treadmill of rocket ships is.
Hamster wheel. Oh, we're at the bottom again. Maybe we're at the top again.
It's like rocket ships to explore the universe. You got to build one. You get somewhere. You got to figure out how to build the next one that's going to get you somewhere else. And inevitably, you're never going to get to the full universe. But if you want to keep going, it's going to take that work, that rework, and that exploration, and constant unknown.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, we were talking about how to build an enterprise that would let you quit your job. And it was interesting to reframe the conversation from job being an endpoint to job being a starting point, right? So if you leave your job, that's the beginning of entrepreneurship, where you're now a leader of your own life, if not the lives of many other people. And if you're going to go on a journey to the end of the universe and constantly explore, it's a lifestyle, man. It is not. You don't get to check out. You don't get the luxuries that come with sort of the ignorance that can be not making that choice, right? As an entrepreneur, I have a degree of responsibility and a degree of decision making that I can't escape. I don't want to be clear. Nonetheless, it's still a conscious choice I have to make. And similarly with leadership, you don't get to just turn off your leader hat. You don't get to set it down and just be asinine and irresponsible because you don't want to do it anymore, right? There's a sort of Spider-Man line in there. It's a power and it's a responsibility at the same time.
Definitely is. Doesn't stop people from putting the head down.
Yeah, fair. Fair.
But it's true. There is a huge responsibility.
Maybe we'll just change education. We'll just change like schools forever. Let's build a leadership.
That's a small ask.
Yeah, it should be done by next Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Give me a week. I'll be done with all the leaders, and then we can go to the kids.
Sure, let's just fix education.
Yeah, no big deal. Come on, guys. Here we go. Leadership. Do your thing. Do your magic.
Exactly. Just grow the next set of leaders.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for jumping in and joining us on this. This is just a great, very enlightening conversation. I love all the metaphors. There's definitely a lot I have to think about on the opposite side of this. And so thank you so much for joining us. We would love to ask just a couple more questions if you have just a couple more minutes.
Fire away. Let's do it.
So first off, what is your definition of authenticity?
You really led with an easy one. I used to think that authenticity was saying what was unexpected. It just punched you, and therefore it was authentic. Now, I believe that authenticity is saying what hasn't been spoken that very much needs to be said. And that often comes with a degree of cost to the speaker.
Yes. I really like that.
I would leave it there.
That is an excellent answer.
Mm-hmm.
So
it explains why it's not easy.
Easier.
Yeah. Second question is much easier.
Yes.
Much easier question. So the second question being, where can people find you in your work and everything you do?
Much easier. Couple different places. On social platforms, it's just my name on almost all of them. Thank you, mom and dad, for a unique name. So that's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, just my name, Aaron, Aaron, Velky, V as in victory, ELKY. Easy to find me there. If you're interested in what Money Club does, the URL is wearemoneyclub.com. If you're interested in what I do outside of the Money Club hat, whether that be retreats or coaching or speaking, just go to aaronvelky.com. So really, really easy, very unilateral. Try to make it as simple as possible. Simplicity is not easy. It is, however, a goal of mine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We have fixed the leadership. We'll fix the school system next.
Yeah, this was amazing. I'm really grateful that you all had me, that we got to talk through all this, that you listened as much as you did. That means a lot. And, let's hope that my crazy ideas and our crazy ideas to make a lot of change happens sooner than we might imagine.
Let's hope. And we're definitely stealing the look up and look at the vision on the field piece.
Yeah.
I have all sorts of ideas already from that.
Yeah, take it.
Also, in the moment and of the moment may yet make an appearance in our.
Yes.
Yeah, you no need to attribute. Just call me and say like, "Hey, this is helpful."
Got it. We got one more person to maybe look out, look up.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. I'm very grateful.
Thank you.